A bitter wind cut across the ghost-gray snows cape north of the wall, keening like some forlorn banshee over desolation. In that wind, so the old crones of Eastwatch swore, rode whispers, shards of forgotten prophecy, half-remembered names, the hush of footsteps that never broke crusted snow, and the hush after a heart stops beating. It was in such a wind, the tales insist, that Brandon Stark first opened the green door of his mind and felt something else step through. No marching hoofbeats heralded the coming, no trumpets. Only the rattling whine of ice in the branches of dead trees and the dim throb of heart's blood beneath the earth's frozen skin. Yet whatever answered Bran's call lingered ever after, casting shadows across the boy's green sight until the dreams that should have been lanterns became labyrinths. For there are labyrinths of ice as well as stone, and one may lose one's way among either. So began, the theorists say, a slow, subtle contest between the weirwood's crimson memory and the pale unlight of an entity long feared and yet unnamed in Maester's ledgers, the Great Other. Men of learning scoff at such fancies. Archmaester Adelbris, whose silver ring denotes mastery of magical lore, writes that the Other, the singular icy monarch glimpsed in ancient verse, cannot be divorced from the others, the white shadows that stalked Westeros during the long night, where, he asks, is the space for some ethereal puppeteer. Yet his own parchments betray him. In a brittle Valyrian scroll salvaged from the smoking ruins of the Freehold and donated to the Citadel by Corlys Velaryon centuries ago, a single marginal glyph, K. Hiver, recurs whenever the scribe alludes to the power beyond ice, beyond death, whose face is no face. Maester Yondell admits the term resists translation, but one gloss reads, Great Unnameable. If the children of Valyria, who bent fire and shadow to their whim, feared to chisel a true name upon stone, how much more should cautious scholars today guard their tongues? Leaving parchment aside, one may consult the singers. Leaf spoke once to Bran beneath the living cavern of Weirwood Root. The cold gods watch as the warm gods dream. Bran, dazed by sap visions, did not press her, but her voice trembled on the word cold. From children of the forest, trembling is rare, and from across the narrow sea, the red priestess Melisandre of Ashai, whose ruby blaze warms her flesh against the lethal chill of northern nights, confided to Jon Snow that many shadows dance in the flames, yet only one darkness consumes the light entire. She did not name that darkness, but her lips drew tight as a noose when the wind howled outside the shield hall. Thus disparate testimonies, from beings as different as wood singers and fire priests, converge upon an image. Something patient, ancient, adversarial to light but larger than the knight's lieutenants. Those who would unravel the tapestry of Bran's visions must start with his descent into the crypts of Winterfell during the sack. Theon Greyjoy's men had strewn corpses beside the Ironwood Kings. Bran hid, and while Hodder trembled, Bran dreamt of the Heart Tree. Typically, the Heart Tree's face weeps for the living. Yet in this dream, the sap ran black, as if shadowed. He heard a voice then, not his father's, a beloved echo he knew, but something thinner, older, sliding along his bones with a chill rasp. Come. The child did not obey. He woke trembling, but the seed was planted. After that night, every green dream bore a jagged edge, as though a frost had crept across the lens. Detractors argue that Bran's growing dread simply mirrored the trauma of war, a mind bruised by lost fashion's monsters. Yet the warp in his visions predates catastrophe. Consider the chapter wherein Jojen Reed recounts to Bran a green dream of the sea flowing over Winterfell. Jojen's eyes were distant, his mouth slack, and Bran marveled that the boy spoke with a stranger's voice. Whose voice but his own? Mira later explained that sometimes the power borrows the dreamer. Borrowed by what? The Reeds trust the old gods. Not an easy trust, given how often those gods ignore prayer. Even so, when Jojen was borrowed, Bran sensed a coldness radiating from him like a shadow of midwinter. If the Weirwoods are memory incarnate, perhaps something may crawl along memory's corridors to wear a dreamer like a cloak. The heart trees themselves revel in duality. Lifewood and Deathface, white bark and red tears. When Bran slips inside a heart tree, he can taste hot sap like the marrow of giants. Yet he also tastes rot beneath, a broth of skull dust and worm-chewed kings. Here, myth converges with the real. In the Hellenic world, the Omphalos stone of Delphi lay above purported vapors from the underworld. Pythia breathed them and spoke for Apollo. The warg is a northern Pythia, and if a god of darkness drifts upward on the sap's exhalation, might it speak too? Classical scholars note the serpentine python who once guarded Delphi was slain, its spirit subjugated by the bright god. Yet some stories hint Python's power remained, a whisper inside Apollo's answers. So may the great other whisper beneath the crimson mask of the old gods, leeching meaning from every droplet. Skeptics recoil. If the old gods are complicit, why would the children nurture the heart trees? Leaf's answer lies in her fear. She told Bran, 1,000 years the singers battled the night. If the singers sacrificed themselves, remember the legend of the Night Fort, where a human king wed a corpse queen. They may have made a bargain not wholly understood. Blood spills, roots drink, and power awakens. The children's songs speak of a pact. Men given the dawn, children the dusk. Yet dusk lengthens into night. Who benefits when the stars freeze in heaven? Consider the weirwood thrown deep beneath the hill of ravens. The last green seer sits entombed within living root, his veins threaded by white fibers, eyes filmed ruby. He sees the past, but does he see the cold future advancing? Brynden Rivers, blood raven to the realm, once knelt before Aegon V, sworn to safeguard the realm from northern necromance. Yet here he fosters Bran's burgeoning power. Did Bloodraven misjudge the invader's subtlety? Or did he believe the only defense lay in forging a weapon of equal magnitude? The terrible logic of alchemists suggests that to master fire, one must know the properties of the black powder. Bloodraven drank of the root. If corruption lurked in the sap, he too may be but a pawn wearing the semblance of a king. One must also weigh the episodes at Queen's Crown. Bran wore Hodder's frame beneath the tower, an act that left both boy and giant trembling. Some chalk that brutality to Bran's inexperience. Yet after, Bran confessed feeling watched, even in Hodder's skin. Watched not by Jojen or Mira, who were occupied, nor by Summer, locked in combat below. What I then kept vigil. Maester Luwin once insisted wargs gaze outward, not inward, but in the icy labyrinth of sorcery, directions blur. The watchful presence could be the tree network itself. But if the great other lurks at the farthest fringes, beyond even the root's reach, its sight may pierce through cracks in the weirwood web, like moonlight through rifts in cloud, illuminating nothing but dread. Critics next raise chronology. The long night ended 8 millennia ago. Surely, they claim, the great other was defeated. Yet defeat may be cyclical, like seasons. In Aztec myth, Quetzalcoatl's twin Tezcatlipoca oscillates between exile and return, each cycle rewriting cosmic order. To the Aztecs, time moved not linear but spiral. If Westeros, too, rides a spiral, the great other might lie dormant, a seed awaiting the right host. Bran, with his half-collapsed legs and uncollapsed mind, arrives as fertile soil. Royal blood for potency, Stark blood for connection, and childhood's malleability for easier grafting. The perfect vessel. Let us appraise textual ripples. Post-Queen's Crown, Bran dreams of a heart tree identical to Winterfell's yet set in a frozen wasteland. Snow choked its eyes, yet the sap bled bright beneath. He heard 3 knocks, hammer-like, echoing away into darkness. A student of folklore discerns ritual invitation, a spirit seeking entry. Lesser ghosts knock thrice upon windows. Mortals must not answer. Bran himself did not stir, but later, in waking life near the Night Fort, he pressed his palm to a door carved with skulls, and it swung open, revealing the black gate of the Night's Watch, another mouth hungry for vows. He did not know why he placed his hand. He simply felt called by memory of old Brandon the Builder, some say. Yet the gate is weirwood, and perhaps the memory that stirred him was not wholly benign. Meanwhile, south of the wall, Melisandre sees in her flames a boy, a wolf, and a weirwood heart burning with black ice. Black ice contradicts nature. Ice is colorless or blue-gray. Black denotes a void, the absence of light. Ice that absorbs flame is the very image of the great other devouring R'hllorès fire. Moreover, Jon Snow in Castle Black begins to glimpse ghostly figures creeping at the edge of his eyes, only to vanish, leaving him cold, as if he had plunged through the wall itself. Jon attributes these to nerves, yet the disturbances intensify whenever ravens caw thrice, echoing Bran's knocks. Ravens, servants of Bloodraven, may be warding off something else, fluttering in panic triads. Knock, 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 we are here, watch, watch, watch. Objection. The Night King, leader of the others, already supplies an antagonist. Why multiply entities? But multiplicity is the marrow of myth. In Mesopotamia, Tiamat births monstrous children yet remains distinct, a deeper chaos underlying each scaly miscreation. Similarly, the Night King could be a first among lieutenants, the great other the wellspring of frost. Indeed, during the Battle of Hardhome, the Night King raises the slain with a single gesture. Who empowers that gesture? Magic must flow from a font. If R'hllorès priests draw from their bleeding god, the ice necromancers presumably draw from theirs. A font not limited to one avatar, but capable of subtle infiltration. Now turn back to Bran's interaction with the past. His cry of "Father!" in the Tower of Joy vision distracts Ned Stark, who half-turns. Time trembles. Leaf laughs yet warns it is dangerous to shout in halls already fallen. Bloodraven assures Bran the past is written, yet the pages shift when Bran calls. If Bran can tug at time, what might tug at Bran? Perhaps the great other, timeless, sees not a river but a sheet of ice where every moment lies superimposed. It could exert pressure from beneath, causing cracks in Bran's glimpses, cracks enough to distort, to mislead. If so, Bran's knowledge becomes a sword with a hilt of smoke. Flashy, lethal, but apt to dissolve at the crucial stroke. Consider politics. Bran's counsel may one day flow through ravens to Winterfell, to King's Landing, shaping alliances against the undead. But should his visions be tainted, the realms may marshal at the wrong pass, send the wrong armies, trust the wrong saviors. When Maester Conwy at Last Hearth receives a raven-bearing Bran's seal instructing Lord Umber to burn his own fields, else harvest rot will feed the dead. Is that caution or sabotage? History is riven with prophets whose riddles slaughtered the faithful. At Delphi, Croesus of Lydia misread, a great empire shall fall and march to ruin. If Bran's voice, though earnest, carries the other's undertone, Westeros might enact its own Croesus tragedy. Symbolism deepens the abyss. Stark words, winter is coming, ancestral gloom yet also vigilance. But if Bran's surveillance sees winter through a warped lens, the very motto becomes a chain yanked by the enemy. The direwolf sigil, 6 pups around 1 albino, has been read as house unity. Yet the weirwood's face is pale too, and the others are pale serpents of humanoid form. Albino ghost stands apart. What if the pale component signals infiltration? No wolf surrendered, but a shadow may wear the skin of one. The red comet's blaze once promised dragons. Some priests read it as blood against snow. If ice consumes fire, comet's tail might freeze mid-arc. Astronomers in Pentos record the comet dimming earlier over the shivering sea than the summer sea. Evidence, perhaps, of an unseen field draining heat. Ser Runsel Hightower's star log ends with the cryptic note. The red fade quickens when the moon is drowned in ice. He died mad, scribbling snowflakes on his chamber walls. Yet madness often scrawls truth too sharp for sanity. Real-world myth offers parallels. The Fimbulwinter of Norse lore preceded Ragnarok, heralded by winds so cold even the watchers of the north kissed fire. There, barricades between realms weakened, giants whispered into dreamers' ears, and the god of trickery sowed betrayal. Bran might be a chosen ear, his innocence painted like frost upon a windowpane through which the great other peers. In Siberian shamanism, the Ngannissans speak of Na, the death god, whose breath appears as blue ice crystals on a sleeping child's eyelashes. When the crystals melt at dawn, the child wakes carrying prophecy or sickness. Bran's eyelids, crusted by brumal tears, flutter open upon visions both glorious and grievous. Rebuttal. Bran also sees warmth. Lioness petals in Ned's memories, the shimmer of dragonflame over Harrenhal, proving the Great Other cannot fully dictate content. True, the Weirwood network is a chorus, yet a single discordant note can derail an aria. If 90 truths cradle one falsehood, men may act upon the falsehood as eagerly as the truth. The Great Other need not rewrite every page. Inserting a single poison line suffices. And if Bran, trusting, conveys the line, the poison spreads. Delving into magic mechanics, the principle of sympathetic resonance governs both ghost grass and wildfire, like calls to like. If the Great Other is polar inversion of Lawler, it may mirror the Red God's flame scrying. Melisandre bleeds leeches to conjure names. Perhaps the Great Other bleeds snowmelt from glaciers to conjure faces. Bran's face, pressed against weirwood bark, might form in distant frost as a reflection, and the frost face could whisper back, imbuing Bran's dream with subtle bias. Indeed, when Bran emerges from certain visions, his breath steams even inside the warm cave. Mira notes ice beads on his brow. Physical residue implies real, not figurative, exchange. Heat traded for knowledge, light for shadow. Politically, if the Great Other manipulates vantage, it manipulates strategy. Suppose Bran foresees White Harbor besieged and urges Lady Manderly south. The true assault might target Deepwood Motte instead. Resources misallocated, defenses broken. Suppose he dreams of the Night King falling beneath Valyrian steel, encouraging complacency, while the undead general simply feigns defeat to lure foes into the heart of winter. War is won not merely by steel but by trust. Fracture trust, watch armies falter. Yet hope glimmers. Awareness of manipulation grants defense. If Bran recognizes foreign presence, he might erect mental ramparts. Dream wards, patterns of prayer the children sing, could insulate consciousness. Three-eyed Crow told him, "A reader, even blind, may close the book." That cryptic maxim gains new weight. To close the book is to halt vision, to deny the voyeur. Such denial costs knowledge, but ignorance may save the soul. Would Bran forfeit omniscience to spare the realm distortion? Duty faces desire. Heroes ripple outward. Jon Snow, Daenerys Targaryen, Arya Stark, all might receive ravens colored by Bran's counsel. If those ravens croak misdirection, fates warp. Dragons burned in vain, queens slain by false alarms, kings crowned in smoke only to kneel before frost. Samwell Tarly at the Citadel pores over dragonglass treatises. If Bran's letters urge him to study sorcery rather than metallurgy, the realm might lack weapons at the hour of need. Even little Rickon, exiled on Skagos, could become pawn. A wolf pup whose roar rallies Northmen to a dying cause. Thus one boy's compromised vision could unweave the tapestry of Westeros. Still, objections persist. Why meddle subtly when brute siege suffices? Because subtlety preserves surprise. The dead stride openly only when victory assured. Until then, sow discord, confusion, despair. Sun Tzu wrote, "All warfare is deception." If ancient warlords understood this, would not an immortal entity perfect the craft? And there is appetite. A spider savors the quiver of prey before the strike. The Great Other, antithesis of life, may savor slow erosion of hope. At last we approach Bran's solitary vigil in the cavern's core, where he watches the past whirl like embers. He sees Ares ordering wildfire caches, sees Lyanna's bed of blood, sees the Night's King astride an ice horse on a ridge older than kingdoms. Then suddenly the scene jolts. Bran stands in an absurd tableau beneath a crescent moon, face to face with himself. Two Brans, both blinking. One tilts his head and smiles. A smile too wide, teeth rhymed. Leaf shakes Bran awake, but he retches chilled sap. The double remains, lurking in recollection. Doppelgangers in folklore mark possession. The Great Other may fashion masks of familiarity to lure the unwary. And yet, cunning though it be, darkness cannot quench every spark. Old Nan's stories taught Bran courage. Ned's honor taught him restraint. Within him burn coals not easily iced. In many myths, The light-bringer falls under shadow only to kindle a deeper blaze. Persephone ate pomegranate seeds yet returned. Izanagi left Izanami in Yomi yet birthed gods of sun. If Bran endures the breach, he might redirect frost energy, forging unity between opposites. Ice sword tempered in dragonfire. But that path wanders beyond canon, and we must halt where the known ends. So the chessboard stands, a crippled boy in tree-racked twilight, a nameless cold presence beyond the wall of roots, an embattled realm awaiting dawn or doom. Every raven, every dream, every flicker in Melisandre's fires may carry coded intentions. Do we trust the visions of a child touched by both weirwood and winter? Or do we question every omen, risking paralysis? If the great other manipulates perception itself, can truth survive? And if truth shatters, who then decides which shard to follow into the encroaching night? Night deepened, and with it the slow-boiling disquiet that lies beneath every hearth in the north. That awareness that snow does not merely fall but hunts. That shadows lengthen not only with dusk but with design. In the cave, Bran breathed sap-sweet air and counted the heartbeats that were not his own. The winking pulse of the weirwood, the measured throb of the three-eyed crow, the faint, almost inaudible cadence of something else. It lurked beyond even Bloodraven's reach, a drum strike muffled by leagues of ice. Yet each beat seemed timed to Bran's breaths, as though testing resonance. Outside, the wall loomed like a vast frozen harpstring, and the wind plucked it, sending vibrations southward. Such vibrations carry more than cold. They carry intent. When intent meets opportunity, history bends. At Castle Black, Jon Snow dreamed of walking the tunnels beneath the wall and finding them rotten with hoarfrost. Axes rang as builders scraped away ice only to reveal deeper layers glittering black, like coal turned to crystal. Jon roused uneasy. He had not visited those shafts in waking life. Yet a raven on his sill croaked one word thrice. Went, went, went. He took the warning to heart and dispatched men to inspect the tunnels. They found the ice sound, yes, but half-melted tracks of something clawed meandering along the floor. The tracks led nowhere, beginning and ending in solid ice. Jon burned fresh torches for 2 nights thereafter, but the wind kept snuffing them, as though breathless mouths exhaled from within the wall itself. The Lord Commander wondered whether Bran watched him from afar and tried to guide his hand. Yet if the message reached him by raven, how could Bran be certain the bird flew true? Maester Aemon used to say, "The language of ravens is remarkably fluent in lies." South in King's Landing, Grand Maester Pycelle pored over scrolls sealed with Winterfell's direwolf. The contents came garbled. Passages of impeccable courtly diction spliced with archaic snatches in the old tongue, a dialect Pycelle barely grasped. Mid-sentence, words twisted as if penned by 2 quills at war. Prepare the city's granaries, for when the moon weeps snow lay beside, the true knight rides no horse of flesh. Pycelle, uneasy, slid the scroll into a coffer bound for the citadel, noting that the ink changed hue precisely where the grammar fractured, from warm brown to a colorless gray that seemed to soak any nearby light. He wondered whether the parchment itself had chilled during transit, for his fingers tingled numb where they brushed the letters. How many lords throughout the realm received whispers thus corrupted? And more pressing, did they discern the chill or simply heed whatever counsel suited them, unknowing of hidden poison? Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen stood atop Meereen's highest pyramid at dawn, gazing westward. Her dragons wheeled overhead, carving fiery spirals through bruised clouds. When she closed her eyes, she saw half-formed visions. A weirwood heart carved with a screaming face, and at its base lay a boy bound in thorns of frost, eyes rolled white. She awoke each dawn to these fragments. Yet in the red waste she had never seen weirwood. The ghostwood's visage nonetheless haunted her, and with it came a phrase she did not recognize. The wolf is the gateway, but the gate opens both ways. She whispered it once to Missandei, who noted it down in 18 tongues, none of which yielded clear translation. Dragons are creatures of flame, and flame abhors cold. Yet Drogon, stalking shadow-like along the parapet, growled when she murmured the words, as though he too felt a draft slide across his scales. If distance could not blunt the great other's reach, Perhaps bloodlines offered a vector. The last green seer bears Targaryen veins, and the Dragon Queen's dreams may echo his. Objection arises. Dreams are kin to desires. Daenerys has reason to imagine Stark faces, for rumors of a northern alliance drift east on every trader's sail. Yet there is chronology to weigh. Her first nightmare of the Heart Tree predated those rumors by moons, and contained minutiae no Essosi sailor could describe. The exact tilt of the branches, the uncanny expression of sorrow and hunger carved into the white wood, the hush of falling needles that are not pine but elm-like leaves blood-red as sunset. Such specificity suggests an intrusive source. If the Great Other can thread visions north to south, what prevents it threading them across the whole world, sewing a net of frost whose knots tighten unseen? In Old Town's torchlit vaults, Archmaester Marwyn consulted dragonglass samples recovered from Snowguard. Under candlelight, the obsidian gleamed oily. He chipped a shard and heated it. Fumes rose smelling of burnt spices. When a novice approached, Marwyn barked, "Fetch the black iron mirror." They darkened the chamber, leaving only the shard's ember glow reflected in the mirror's glassy depth. Within, a silhouette took form, tall, gaunt, crowned with antlers of ice. The novice screamed, but the Archmaester jotted notes. Subject appears when dragonglass heated. Hypothesis: obsidian stores memory of making, fire meeting volcanic glass. Memory accessed becomes portal for opposite force. Yet while Marwyn scribbled, the shard cooled, and hoarfrost crawled down the iron stand. The novice's skin blistered white where a snowflake settled on his cheek. Marwyn smashed the mirror, but its shards still radiated a chill that took half a day to fade. The Citadel prides itself on rationalism. Yet here, rationalism melted before an impossible frost. Marwyn later penned a raven to distant Karth, seeking texts on mirrorcraft of the Lengii. But those texts speak of sky demons drawing souls into polished obsidian. The Archmaester now wears a talisman of fire opal at his throat and refuses to meet his own reflection after dark. Some cite the legend of the last hero to argue that children of the forest oppose the cold entirely. After all, they provided dragonsteel and magic to end the long night. Yet legends change like riverbeds. In one Skagosi carving, the last hero's sword is broken by a weeping weirwood, and children dance around the stump while pale riders look on. In another, a child's shadow offers the hero a wolf's heart to eat, promising strength. Shadows have no allegiance. They merely mimic forms. Thus, the children may be gardeners of power, neither sun nor shade by nature, pruning whichever branch threatens balance. If the Great Other is a vine-choking light, the children might yank it free, unless they mistake vine for root or root for vine. What grows deep can rarely be excised without harming the tree. Travel northward to the Night Fort, where legendary sacrifices were fed to pitted black stones. Bran once felt that castle's emptiness hum like a hollow lung. Mira, though brave, refused to sleep within its walls. Ghost tales speak of Mad Axe and the Rat Cook, but few speak of the Sealed Well. Its capstone bears no runes, yet rings periodically with frost star cracks even in summer. Some rangers report muffled echoes, as though vast caverns exist beneath, filled with moving ice. When Bran dreamed himself a weir across the well's mouth, he sensed a yawning corridor slanting downward toward a place of utter silence. Silence so complete it devoured memory. He fled that dream gasping. Afterwards he woke unable to recall his mother's face for the span of 3 breaths. Such amnesia passed, yet reminded him that knowledge itself can be gnawed by cold. A realm that forgets its mothers will soon forget its sons. One might think the Maester's chains proof against such fear. Chains are forged of reason, each link a discipline. Yet every metal has melting point, and at absolute zero, iron becomes brittle as glass. If the Great Other lowers the realm's temperature in spirit as well as flesh, faith in rational order might fracture. Already, books vanish from archives. A treatise on R'hlloreth's dualist cosmology burned in a suspicious sconce accident. A pale stone map rumored to show tunnels under the Shadow Tower stolen on a fog-bound night. Thieves could be simple men chasing gold. They might also be shadows in human guise, harvesting knowledge that counters frost. How to fight what you cannot remember. Politics weaves another thread. Cersei Lannister, at court, receives a white raven bearing violet eyes, dyed, no doubt, by some Essosi alchemist, to announce winter's official arrival. Yet within the scroll, alongside standard weather warnings, appears a line in northern script and used south of Moat Cailin. The wolves howl false. Cersei, vexed, orders Pycelle to decipher. He cannot. She burns the message. But Marjorie Tyrell glimpses the line and sends word to Highgarden, where herbal lore keeps old runic primers. The Tyrell archivists translate, "Beware the messenger, a threat, perhaps, or a warning to distrust ravens that carry counsel from the Green Seer." If great houses heed such whispers, alliances fray further, leaving the realm as fragmented as shattered ice. A divided realm cannot marshal against winter. Riverrun sees omens too. Blackfish Tully watches mist rise from the tumblestone and freeze midstream into ghostly bridges that collapse with daylight. One dawn he discovers salmon shoals dead, bellies up, eyes rimed crystalline. He sends a cask of the fish to Lady Stoneheart, who, half dead herself, senses foul magic and orders bonfires along the riverbanks. Flames crackle night and day, yet the fog thickens. Corpses along the Red Fork do not bloat. They frost. Bran, far away, feels a tugging every time such corpse clouds form, like a hook through his navel drawing him forward. He resists, but resisting grows harder the more he learns. Knowledge is lure and snare. If he refuses to see, he cannot help the living. If he sees, he risks showing the seer to the unseen. In the Iron Islands, damp winds carry peculiar dreams. Euron Greyjoy, perched upon the Silence's deck one moonless watch, claims to see a mountain of glass rising in the north, crowned by a face of blue fire. He laughs and orders his crew to carve that vision on their shields. Sailors mutter that blue fire is ill luck, but Euron says, "All gods are sails for those who know the winds." He collects priests of many faiths. Why not court one more? Some conjecture Euron's arrogance blinds him to risk. Others whisper he bargains knowingly, believing he can bridle the frost as he seeks to bridle a kraken. Pride may prove the great other's finest door. For what is more hollow than a man who believes himself brimful of destiny? Bran glimpses Euron in a fever dream and tastes salt mixed with cold ash. The ash falls upward. Parallels bloom in real-world myth. Zoroastrianism tells of Ungra Mainyu, destructive spirit, locked in cosmic duel with Ahura Mazda. Yet some scholars argue Angra Mainyu is not separate but the shadow of Ahura Mazda's own perfection, a necessary absence to define presence. If the great other once mirrored the old gods, perhaps it reflects the darkest image of the same source. A mirror does not lie, it inverts. By that logic, Bran's every virtuous impulse, empathy, protectiveness, casts a corresponding inverted echo in the frosted glass of the great other's awareness. When Bran weeps for Hodder's torment, the other might rejoice, not in cruelty alone but in understanding his heart enough to twist it. A monster that studies compassion learns to counterfeit it, forging counterfeit omens that pass muster to all but the most wary. We must confront the largest objection. If the great other wields such mastery, why permit dragons, champions of fire, to return? The answer may lie in scale. To douse a great blaze, one piles not water but kindling soaked in oil, guiding flame into a furnace where it exhausts itself. Dragons draw men south, away from the snows they should fight. Dragons burn stores of grain. Famine softens fortitude. Refugees clog roads and spread tales of hopelessness. While realms fixate on dragonfire, winter crawls silently, unopposed. And dragons themselves are mortal. Spear, scorpion, or treachery may fell them. The great other may view dragons as lances of wildfire aimed down the wrong corridor, impressive but misdirected. Already, Daenerys' conquests leave a wake of ashes. Ashes feed no hearth. Still, the forces of fire adapt. Lawloress priests gather at Dragonstone beneath a sky bruised purple. They chant in languages older than Valyria. Every chant births sparks swirling like fireflies. One spark lodges in a priest's beard, burning yet leaving no singe. They claim a new prophecy. The crippled wolf shall dance upon the pyre, and frost will weep blood. If they mean to purify Bran through flame, they misapprehend Greensight's essence. Flame severs root. Sever the root and you fell the tree, yet the ground remains filled with seeds. Better they learn to weave warmth into root rather than attempt excision, else they risk handing Bran wholly to the cold once the fires douse. Magic is rarely singular. The Valyrians believed for principal forces churn the world: earth, water, wind, and flame. They ignored the fifth, void. The children know void, spaces between tree roots where darkness dwells. The great other may not be ice alone. Ice is but the skin. Void is bone. Bran feels that void when vision ends abruptly and he floats in nothingness before waking. He calls it between place, but the name matters less than the pull. If he were to linger in the void too long, might he hear a voice more seductive than any living tongue? Void offers absence of pain, absence of grief, absence of burden. It is the tempting hush that follows every tragedy. In that hush, choices can be unmade, sometimes for a price. Thus rumor begins to coil that Bran might be Night King reborn, or the Night King's adversary, or the coin spinning between both. People fear contradictions. They prefer simple banners. As tales of strange ravens multiply, some northern clans mutter that Old Nan's boy became something other, that perhaps the wildling oathbreakers were right to cage their greenseers lest their minds be poached. Rumor becomes suspicion. Suspicion becomes blades drawn at council fires. A clan that refuses to answer the Stark's call weakens the king in the north at a stroke. Petty fractures widen into ravines the dead need not cross. They merely wait for each side to build camps and die there. Yet hope endures in unlikely corners. Gilly, cradling her babe at Horn Hill, dreams of white weirwood leaves falling into a prayer circle of the seven. The mother statue gathers the leaves in her stone hands and molds them into a scarlet bowl. When she wakes, the child coos, and his breath fogs in summer heat, yet she feels no chill. Perhaps innocent breath can warm even cursed air. Elsewhere, Podrick Payne teaches the youngest Freys to build cairns of river rock that reflect sunlight like mirrors. These cairns, reputedly, scare away wights in the twins' sodden mists. Small acts of unheralded folk may weave a counterspell. Fires on riverbanks, songs beside empty cradles, prayers whispered by smiths shaping plowshares into spearheads. Ice devours, but life multiplies. Each birth is a defiance. Throughout all, Bran surveys the tapestry and sees himself as both thread and weaver. The three-eyed crow dies nightly, lungs still, heart root-bound, yet lives through Bran. When Brynden fades at last into bark and soil, the mantle lies solely upon the boy. He contemplates sealing himself from the void by forsaking visions. But men flee winter by shutting doors. Frost seeps through fissures nonetheless. Better to open the door wide and invite fire to dwell inside, forging alliance of heat and memory. How to kindle such fire without burning the web that sustains him? The question gnaws. So Bran experiments. He dreams himself into summer as before, but also into the mind of a squirrel, into the heart of a raven, and then, daring further, into the sap of a sapling still green. He feels the sapling's stiff hope, its striving. Amid that verdant urge, no frost finds purchase. Perhaps growth repels void by nature. If so, Bran must teach the north to grow even in winter, to plant fields of quick-sprouting grain beneath glass, to raise children's laughter against howling winds. Yet time runs thin. Night's queen advances, whether in form of a singular monarch or an ideology of despair, and every delay grants the great other more admiration from those who seek certainty in silence. And still the wind cuts across the ghost-gray snowscape, bearing whispers. In Eastwatch, an old crone pricks her ears and sighs that the wind's tune has altered. It used to whine, now it hums, and soon it will sing. She does not know the lyrics, but suspects they promise reunion. Of what with what, she dares not guess. In Winterfell's Godswood, the heart tree sheds a leaf whose veins trace a map of the wall. Where the map tears, a drop of black sap falls, sizzling in the snow. In Pentos, Illyrio Mopatus receives a weather glass that frosts on the inside and sells it for scrap, dismissing omens as poor trade. Everywhere, signs accumulate like snowflakes, harmless alone, lethal when drifted. And Bran? He sits upon his living throne, eyes milk-white, mind stretching across ages like taffy pulled by invisible fingers. He sees the long night as it once was, not a blanket but a blade. He sees the man who forged that blade and the woman who tempered it with tears. He sees the gods old, new, red, drowned, great shepherd, arrayed around a pit that never fills, each dropping prayers like pebbles that vanish before touching bottom. He sees a mirror within a mirror, reflecting him endlessly, each reflection slightly colder, until at last the final likeness holds no color at all. He wonders whether that final Bran blinks back, watching, waiting. Somewhere beyond the wall, the great other waits likewise. Perhaps it is mindless hunger, perhaps a vast intellect, perhaps a mirror after all, devoid of malice yet incapable of mercy. It manipulates Bran's visions not out of spite but necessity. Light invites shadow. The question lingers like frosty breath. Can Bran skew the dance, teach shadow to cast no poison and light to accept a modicum of chill? Can harmony exist between extremes, or must one extinguish the other? If harmony proves impossible, which shall he serve, knowing either choice will break worlds? And so the story creeps onward unseen. Ravens in flight, snowflakes twisting through moonlit silence, whispers coiling in a crippled boy's skull. The reader might crave resolution, an answer as bright as dawn. Yet dawn itself burns but a moment before dusk begins its stealthy work. The wheel turns, the spiral unwinds, the labyrinth yawns. Somewhere a wind keens or hums or sings, and the song asks, again and again, in tongues of ice and in tongues of flame, when the door of your mind opens, who will step through, and will you know their name before they speak it? Clouds like bruised parchment swelled over the shivering sea, their underbellies lit by faint aurorae that writhed green and violet, as though the sky itself warred between budding spring and frozen doom. Sailors on the Ibanez whalers muttered prayers to stone-faced gods, for such lights foretold change, and change upon that sea rarely came kind. One harpooner named Carl the Quiet, broad as a bull walrus and twice as scarred, woke from a doze on deck and swore he had glimpsed, in the flickering curtains overhead, a boy's pale eyes staring through the colors, eyes that seemed to know his hidden shame, his one cowardly night buried years ago beneath ale and alley snow in Bravos. Carl spat, swore again, and would have blamed rum had the cask not still stood sealed. When later he slipped on frost-rimed planks and snapped his forearm clean through, he muttered that the eyes had jinxed him. The mate laughed, yet the laugh rang thin, because other men that watch also saw the same eyes that night and spoke of them not at all. Such anonymous testimonies drift like flotsam on rumor's tide, but when they cluster, each from lips that never met, they form new constellations in the scholar's sky chart. One more star to add to the pattern of Bran's influence or its counterfeit. South in the Vale of Arryn, a crisp midday sun threw diamond brilliance across the Ares' white towers. Yet in the solar young Lord Robert clutched his doll and trembled. Maester Coleman found him mumbling that snowy crows were scratching the sky, raking talons so loud they drowned his mother's lullaby. Coleman soothed him with milk of the poppy diluted threefold, but the boy's eyes flitted beneath half-closed lids, chasing fears through dream fog. When sweet sleep finally claimed Lord Robert, Coleman stole parchment and quill to record the details, for these new fits differed markedly from earlier shaking sickness. Before, Robert shrieked only at things before his nose. Dust motes, insects, imaginary beasts rising from his chamber corners. Now he shrieked at visions beyond windows, beyond mountains, beyond sense. The maester's log notes frost building on the glass despite noon warmth. He resorted to breathing on the pane just to finish the entry. That hush of unexpected cold has grown common in far-flung towers, as though some vast unseen presence exhales where it peers. Coleman debated sending word to the citadel, then hesitated, for Pycelle languished in a cell, Marwyn in seclusion, and conclave politics bristled like spinning axes. The citadel would sooner ascribe the fits to Highland airs than concede occult infiltration. Thus was another witness consigned to personal annals, and the tapestry remained ragged. Yet ragged tapestries hide cracks in castle walls, and through those cracks spiders creep. Among the silk-robed whisperers of King's Landing, talk already shifts. The Vale's boy lord tastes winter before the rest, they say, and that suggests the Eyrie may fall first when the storm of the dead breaks. Fear seldom needs accuracy. Suspicion alone corrodes alliances. Perhaps the great other knows that better than any maester, for suspicion requires less force than blade or blizzard. Across mountain, river, and field the sons of House Royce still brandish runes against dark. Bronze helms etched with first men's sigils pass from father to son. Those runes depict suns and flames, yet north of the Wolfswood, free folk have carved the same sigils into frozen bark upside down, a deliberate inversion. When Tormund Giant's Bane stumbled on such a tree, arrows notched but unused, he spat and called it crow sorcery. For only crow gods, he said, read runes inside out. But Ygritte once told Jon that the gods of the forest speak as cunningly backward as forward. A fox leaves prints both entering and leaving a den. If the true forest god is shadowed by a forge-cold twin, its symbol may be writ inverted in ice. Carvings alone prove little, yet each inverted sun gnaws faint warmth from passers-by, as if the glyph itself sips courage. The Red Priests preach that symbols hold power only insofar as men grant belief, but that overlooks an older truth. Men breathe power into symbols unconsciously, merely by fearing them. The faceless men of Bravos fear little openly. Yet even behind blank masks, dread writes itself in the tremble of finger bones, in candle gutters, in the widening of pupil against a lens of calm. When an acolyte known only as the waif knelt before the dark pool to polish the stone faces, she glimpsed for an instant her own reflection in still water, except it was not hers. The face staring back bore weirwood eyes, red as sunset blood, though the water remained perfectly black. She blinked. The image dissolved. The kindly man later scolded her for tarrying, but when she described what she had seen, his mouth became a thin line, and the next lesson involved burning incense stronger than any prior invocation. The House of Black and White worships death shown many faces. Perhaps it has no appetite for a death that wears only one, an unlidded eye of endless cold. Essos yields other foreshadowings. In Karth, the warlocks gather in their shattered tower to debate the pale comet that once heralded dragons. They argue whether its memory in the sky still lingers as a ghost path, invisible yet potent. Piet claims to have summoned a scrap of that comet's tail into a crystal sphere, yet boasts that inside the sphere dances not fire but frost. A sliver of night so chill it turns pyromancer's hair white merely to observe. The other warlocks laugh. Pre's boasts grow tall as the tower's broken ribs, yet one by one they approach his chamber and exit pale, shaking hands hidden in sleeves. In distant Ass-High, Shadowbinders read these tremors as proof that the cosmic conflict between flame and frost bleeds into mortal spellcraft, souring sorceries like milk too long in summer heat. They advise their clients to hoard light, be it in lantern or in soul, for soon the markets of night will buy hope at 10 times its weight in gold. Meanwhile, back beneath the stark crypts, dust stirs unbidden some nights, swirling in silent imitations of the dance of direwolves. Rickon's carved likeness, small and sharp-featured beside his lupin companion Shaggy Dog, sometimes bears frost on its stone muzzle at dawn, though the air below remains stuffy, stale. Septons chalk it up to ground moisture. Yet the soil under Winterfell has warmed of late, heated by forges and hearths rekindled since Bolton banners fell. Warm air should banish frost, not cultivate it. Glover men mutter that the old kings never rest when foreign banners fly overhead. Others fear something else stalks those tunnels, something far more foreign than flayed men. Yet who dares descend? The watchful eyes of stone kings weigh heavy, eyes none recall carving so deep or so wide before. Perhaps the cold encourages exaggeration. Perhaps stone, like raven quills, lies. Further south still, in the riverlands battered by war, the Brotherhood without banners fan embers of resistance. They ride hedgerows by night, striking at fry patrols and melting into fields with dawn. Beric Dondarrion's absence left a vacuum filled by Lady Stoneheart's iron will. Yet cracks form. Thuras of Myr, once content to follow the resurrected Lightning Lord, now questions whether the Mother of Mercy can truly wield lawless justice when her veins no longer carry warmth. His faith dims each time her dead flesh whitens a shade nearer to ice. One rainy eve he cast the Lord's kiss of fire on a captive to force confession, and the flame burned blue, not orange. The confession that followed was incoherent, merely a babble of childhood memories. Thuras shook, extinguished the torch, and vowed never again. A blue flame is still flame, yet every priest learns early that hue reveals mixture. Too much sulfur yields green, too little saltpeter yields yellow. What then yields blue where none was expected? At the Lord's table of cosmic war, impurities are seldom happenstance. Even Dorne, where sun reigns supreme, receives chills unlocked by spies of shadow. Near Lemonwood, a fisherman's wife claims that on cloudless dawns she watches sea mist spread from the broken arm like fingers, and within that mist appear pillars of ice so tall their tops vanish. They drip not water but dust, fine as bone meal, that dissolves before touching wave-tops. Maester Caliot, visiting on retainer to Prince Doran, inspects her claim and glimpses only distant haze, but he does record gulls fleeing inland those mornings, raucous as though chased. 2 months later vultures roost, reports vultures refusing carcasses left in open desert, preferring to roost hungry. The orphans of the green blood whisper that the river dreams of ice, though its current still runs warm enough to bathe. Dreams, even in water, travel far. Cersei Lannister, for her part, laughs at such tales. The common folk piss themselves at frost in the shade. She sneers and orders wildfire stores increased threefold, because fighting phantoms costs less than fighting dragons and sells better in sermons. Yet candles burn lower in Maegor's holdfast. Their wicks gutter on nights absent any draught. Listeners claim the silence in certain corridors thickens until even footfalls echo dimly, as though swallowed. Qyburn, wandering those corridors alone, once touched a stone buttress and drew back with a hiss. The surface held the bite of winter, slick with breath frost though deep underground. He pried flakes loose to examine them. They melted not into water but into dry dust. Another impurity. He wonders if some alchemical cousin to wildfire might be devised from such frost dust, a weapon inverting flames' hunger. Feed a conflagration of cold to dragons, let them freeze from within. Qyburn's peers would balk, yet the maester turned ex-pyromancer seldom needed peers' permission. The great other manipulates. Cunning men may scramble to harness the same currents and in so doing become new vectors for its designs. The Red Temple in Volantis counters such cold with feverish zeal. Kinvara, High Priestess, convenes a council candle lit from 1,000 braziers, each flame fed by scented oils. She preaches that only absolute blaze will cauterize the breach and names the great other an infection struck into the world's marrow long ago. But some acolytes murmur that infections become immune to medicines applied too often. Escalate fire, and the great other may learn to drink it. Debate simmers behind silk screens. No one raises voice above hush because hush itself feels treasonous. Lawless priests fear the sin of shadows, not a betrayal of light but a union of light and darkness giving birth to something new. Every priest who peers long in the flames and sees a shape he cannot interpret must decide whether to confess confusion or claim faith enough to understand. The wise confess confusion quickly. The proud claim understanding and sooner or later preach a vision that eats them alive. Among the sailors of Blacktide, a different faith blossoms. They speak of the drowned god's domain shifting. Freezing waves churn where none should. Frost barnacles cling to hulls within hours of docking. The priests declare it an omen that the drowned god retreats before a foe it cannot drown. One priest, Tarl the Grey, dreams of a throne of glass beneath the sea, upon which sits a corpse king whose eyes shine star-bright. Fish freeze mid-swim around him, yet water continues to flow. Tarl awakes with lips cracked and tongue numb, as though he had inhaled brine. Torn between heresy and certainty, he pens letters to the captain of every Blacktide longship, urging them to hunt no more whales. Their song keeps warmth in the deep, he writes, else the silence left behind invites frost. Superstition or instinct, the same instinct that drives deer from forests before wildfires. If the great other's reach extends to ocean trenches, no refuge exists but in song and flame, and whales sing deeper than men. Samuel Tarley at the Citadel pores over dusty codices and writes long letters to John describing strange synchronous phenomena. Crops rotting in spates 3 leagues apart, ravens losing feathers overnight, children born with a call so cold it cracks rather than tears. He wonders if the harmony of nature unspools like a lute string overdue for tuning. Hidden in one codex on Roiner water magic, he finds mention of river ice in summer, omen of the Star Stealer. The Roiner fled dragons, not blizzards, yet recorded such portents decades before Valyria ever marched. Could the same Star Stealer now unbind the North? Elder Maesters dismiss Sam as a credulous boy, but he counts each dismissal one more blindfold tied over the realm's eyes. Amid these worldwide shivers, Bran trains. He rides the weirwood thicket like a spider swinging from strand to strand, each memory a knot. Yet not all knots reside in the past. Some open into the present. Arya stepping lightly through Braavosi fogs, Sansa presiding over rebuilt Winterfell, Jon brooding at parapets above endless white. And some knots open into something else. A cavern not of wood but of echo, lined with mirrors that bear no reflection. There, temptation lingers. Voices speak truths unknown to Bran, small details that later prove accurate. Gilly's babe's first tooth, the cracked keystone on the Ares east parapet. Proof enough of knowledge, perhaps proof enough of good intent. But when Bran lingers, he feels heat leach from his bones. Each visit shorter, each departure harder. He wonders if the mirrors store stolen hours, and if so, who may unroll them later. Brynden Rivers no longer offers counsel. His lips fuse to root, he has passed beyond words. Yet ravens still flutter in the cavern, black starlings carrying dreams in beaks. One raven lands on Bran's arm and croaks thrice, bleeding at the eyes though otherwise hale. Bran strokes its feathers. His fingers come away sticky with sap that smells of winter roses. The bird dies quietly, but when Bran blinks, it stands alive again, perched upon the same branch, repeating the same croak. A loop, perfect and fruitless. Magic, like river water, seeks level. Overload the stream and eddies form, swirling endlessly. Perhaps the great other's influence does not need to choose sides. Perhaps it merely erodes boundaries until time doubles back on itself, trapping all actors in repeating tragedies, each reenactment colder, stiffer, deader than the last. Opposition stirs even among the dead. In a crypt forgotten beneath the night fort, a white half-fused to wall stone flails at unseen shackles when the moon wanes. Rangers discovered it by torch glare and dared not slice it free. Ser Dennis Mal Lister suggests the creature struggles not against living men but against some unseen Hayas, like a puppet hacking its own strings. If so, whites too may rebel against their puppeteer, given reason. A morbid prospect, turning the dead against the colder dead, but war seldom chooses noble tools. Bran glimpses the chained white once in dream, hears its voice clear as his own. Let me sleep. The plea unsettles him more than any threat. Pity for the undead might undermine resolve faster than fear. South of the wall, Queenscrown's tower still stands derelict. On a crisp, cloudless night, Jon Snow returns alone, seeking to test the ground for summer thaw. He brings Ghost. The dire wolf paces restlessly, hackles stiff under moonlight. Jon climbs the spiral staircase and stands where he once fought Corran Halfhand's killer. Memory stitches old blood on the floor. A restless breeze circles the chamber, and in its hush Jon hears a child's laughter. Familiar, half-choked with wonder, perhaps Bran's from days rolling in falling leaves. He calls Bran's name. No answer but the breeze, and in that breeze a second laugh overlays the first, sibilant, echoing across ice forms, unmistakably inhuman. Jon descends at dawn and scathed yet unsettled, sure only that his brother walked there in dream and that something else walked alongside. He had felt outnumbered. Ruling lords weigh such portents as best they can. Stannis Baratheon, encamped near the Crofters' village, receives Melisandre's warning that dragonglass mines beneath Dragonstone must be sanctified anew. Their caverns bleed cold. He snorts. Concerns near the neck already drown his stores. Yet Shireen's nightmares worsen whenever miners haul fresh obsidian. Each shard resonates like a tuning fork pitched to some chill frequency only children and sorcerers hear. Stannis loves his daughter in secret. Love cracks his granite heart each time she whimpers. He summons Septons to bless the tunnels alongside the Red Priestess, a desperate compromise, as though splitting faith might split peril. Melisandre cooperates with icy politeness, but her eyes flash red ember whenever Septon prayers mention snow. Their words bounce down caverns and echo back distorted. Vowel sounds elongated, stripped of warmth. The miners find dusting of hoarfrost on their eyelashes, though their torches blaze near their faces. They swear to retire, but coin and duty drag them beneath again. Gold, grief, and faith spin men in circles, and circles please the spiral-hungry void. Atop the wall, the Night's Watch stands thin as crow pickings. Dolorous Ed, now Lord Steward, writes daily logs laced with humor so dry it seems parched by desert sun. Yet even Ed ceases jesting when he notes that torches left overnight in the parapet sconces burn down yet leave wicks unblackened, as if flame consumes wax but refuses intimacy with cloth. He jots in the margin. Either we bred fire too shy to kiss, or something else licked the wicks clean. John reads the log and pictures tongues of frost bending flame like wax before snuffing it. He requests dragonglass-lined torches, the armory objects to wasted obsidian. Warfare often fails before first arrow looses, defeated by ledgers, not blades. In Bravos, Arya Stark crosses bridges under colorless dawn, face of a fishmonger girl, basket on hip. She hears bells toll 9 times, once too many, and eyes narrowed counts again. Bells tell hours. 9 speaks midday hunger, but sun has yet to clear rooftops. She asks an urchin. He heard only 8. A private hour rung only for her? When such impossibilities multiply, the mind chooses either silence or suspicion. Arya chooses the latter. That night she stares into the pool of black and white and chants the litany. Fear cuts deeper than swords, yet a new line grows in her heart unbidden. But ice cuts deeper than fear. She refuses to mouth it. Refusal, however, does not excise it. Words take root merely by being known. From Old Guys to Lannisport, rumors swirl of red priests dueling silent sisters of the stranger in graveyards, of maesters forging silver links etched with runes long deemed obsolete, of traveling mummers staging plays in which frost devours tyrants to the crowd's delight. Each rumor a spark. Sparks drift like fireflies across a storm plain, dancing ahead of thunder. The great other may not quell sparks. No, it may shepherd them, steering panic into eddies that distract while deeper infiltration proceeds. Yet sparks can ignite bonfires unplanned. Uprisings spring from folk ballads as often as from banners. Whichever side masters storycraft masters morale, and morale decides sieges. Bran's visions and distortions thus double as propaganda. A single raven bearing dire tidings can send half the reach into harvest hysteria. A second raven contradicting the first can send the other half to war against their frightened neighbors. Chaos spreads, fertile soil for winter. Still, beneath such bleak unfolding, threads of resilience weave. The children of the forest, those scattered few, gather near the Isle of Faces, far from nightly hunts of men. There, they sing in languages older than sap. They etch counter-runes into bark, shaping new labyrinths that trap echoes before they reach dreamers. They weave nets of vine across weirwood roots, nets glittering with dew that never drips, nets that hum softly when ghost winds blow. Whether these defenses can match the great other's cunning remains unclear, but will alone can dam even ocean tides, if piled high and mended hourly. Bran feels their weaving like a tickle in his skull, comforting though fragile, and redoubles his own inner wards. Labyrinths within labyrinths, memories of laughter sealed behind doors with iron handles forged in summer days, when snow was but a bedtime tale. In Pentos, Illyrio Mopatis hosts a banquet for 3 rival magisters. aiming to broker grain deals before winter craze inflates prices. Between courses, he displays an exotic artifact, a cube of ice that refuses to melt though set beside braziers. He claims it stole Flame's breath. The magisters laugh politely. Later, one fingers the cube in secret, planning to carve chips for his mistress's jewel box. He gasps as blood darkens his fingertips where cold sears like red-hot iron. The cube drinks heat greedily. He pockets it nonetheless, dreams of gold. Gold may purchase armies, but sometimes armies carry unwitting Trojan horses. Objects soaked in alien frost that seeds new front lines behind friendly walls. The great other's brilliance perhaps lies not in conquering, but in inviting men to carry pieces of its winter home like smugglers of plague. Upon Blazewater Bay, smoke from forges blacken sunset, yet take note, the smoke no longer drifts solely upward. On nights of no wind, threads of soot curve northward of their own accord, as though magnetized. Maester Himar, observing from a watchtower, swears the smoke travels too fast for mere breeze. He uses a Myrish lens. The dark plumes snake into the north and vanish beyond sight. Smoke is heat's ghost. If ghosts now hurry home to cold, what does that forebode? Through all these whispers, objections still arise. Are not men themselves architects of doom? Greed, cruelty, pride, these suffice to fell empires before. Why attribute Eve? Re-shiver to a cosmic puppeteer? Yet such arguments ignore the curious harmonization of events. Frost on stepstones and in Dorne on the same dawn. Ravens across 3 kingdoms croaking triple calls within 1 hour. Blue flames and frost dust appearing where no physical nexus exists. Coincidence, perhaps, but recall the Maester's adage. 2 is chance, 3 is pattern. We now tally dozens beyond 3. Supposing, though, that the pattern is real, how to thread needle between paranoia and paralysis? Bran wrestles nightly with that stitching. He consults Jojen's old greensight lessons. See, do not steer, Jojen taught. Yet passivity serves the great other. A river left unbanked floods. Bran tests gentle corrections. A raven to Jon hinting at tunnel threats yet promising no certainty. A vision whispered to Daenerys of the need for glass towers on Dragonstone's cliffs. A flicker sent to Sam's candle flame guiding his eye to a footnote about Starstealers. Each gentle nudge sparks changes faint but real. Jon hastens repair of trapdoors. Daenerys drafts new turret designs. Sam cross-references treatises previously ignored. Bran wonders whether such subtlety evades the manipulator's notice or simply entertains it. Perhaps the great other values worthy opponents to sharpen its void-forged mind. Perhaps it lures resistance only to adapt. In the library at Winterfell, Sansa Stark discovers a passage long sealed by candle wax. When she scrapes the wax, letters bloom ink-fresh though centuries old. A warning from Queen Alice Karstark to her children, describing frostborn shapes that whispered through arrow slits during the Night of 7 Veils. She had sought protection in prayer, not swords, because metal sings to cold as metal sings to forge. The letter ends abruptly, a blot as though the quill froze mid-stroke. Sansa shows the passage to Maester Wolkan, who advises resealing it. Old fears stir unrest. Sansa curtly declines. Knowledge, she argues, is armor. Yet the letter's reemergence sets servants murmuring, and some demand extra pay to remain in tower rooms at night. Armor comes with weight. Only the strong wear it long. During a storm off Cape Wrath, a lanternfish schooner reports hailstones that strike deck and explode into showers of fine crystal shards, each shard shaped like a tiny rune, repeating patterns. Circles bisected by jagged lines reminiscent of the Night King's breastplate. The sailors collect shards as lucky trinkets, unaware that each rune fragments when warmed by palm, releasing vapor colder than ice. One sailor pockets a shard and dies in his bunk of lungs frozen solid while his blanket remains unchilled. The captain jettisons the shards. They float, refusing to sink, bobbing like lanterns though they emit no light. By dawn they are gone. Sea swallows secrets greedily, but the swallowing leaves ripples. Word of such ripples reaches the citadel again, and this time the higher ring-wearers convene emergency conclave. They debate dispatching icebreakers south. Groups of interdisciplinary scholars tasked with debunking frost superstitions lest panic spread. Yet even as whistles blow to close debate, a frost line creeps along the marble dais, crackling underfoot. Archmaester Peristan slips, bruises hip, breaks chain link. His ring of pale steel lies upon the frost, glinting blue-white as if newly forged. No open window, no winter gale, only hush. Maesters are men of reason. They call for torches, douse floor in salt water, salt said to banish unnatural cold. The line recedes, but reason itself wavers. They adjourn with more questions than before. A craft fails when craftworkers doubt its tools. Outside those halls, small folk craft new prayers. To the sun's dog to chase off frost wolves. To the hearthkeeper to seal chimneys from ghost icicles. To the red river to reroute its course and drown white shadows. Each prayer births song, song births courage, and courage births defiance. Defiance may jar manipulators' cadence. For the great other relies not solely on temperature but on despair. Bran recognizes that subtlety. Chill air can be broken with fur, but chill spirit demands inner furnaces stoked. Thus he weaves bright memories into his letters. A childhood midsummer feast, Arya's laughter when snowflakes melted on her nose, Rickon's toddling chase of fireflies. These fragments warm hearts that read them, even if they dismiss the warnings. Heat too may recruit, yet for every spark there is a shadow. Euron's fleet carves westward on a sea as flat as hammered iron. On moonless nights he orders lanterns doused until only starlight guides. Crew hear flapping of wings overhead, too slow for gulls, too large for crows. Yet nothing shows against that black. Some whisper dead dragons, others winged wights.
Euron Merely smiles.
He pours wine onto deck. The puddle freezes, yet his cup steams. Perhaps his blood runs helter between flame and frost, forging him vessel for whichever prevails. The flute of his mad laughter cannot decide, and still the shivering seas aurori writhe. Scholars once believed those lights extinguished with dawn. Now some linger hours past sunrise, visible even against pale blue. Their colors shift, violet mixing with bruised sunset orange, producing streaks reminiscent of dawn and dusk entangled. The sky itself becomes liminal, a boundary undone. Boundaries dissolve also within Bran. Past and present, vision and waking, self and other. He learns to anchor by pain, pinching his own thigh to confirm flesh, though even pain loses edge in prolonged cold. Children of the forest teach songs to bind sensation. Rhythms of heartbeat, whispers of leaf rustle, drone of summer bees. He recites them, clinging to warmth of memory, weaving a barricade of hum within hum. Some nights it works. Others he wakes on tree root floor trailing frost crystals from hair. In one such waking, he beholds Mira sleeping with spear beside her, breath clouding. He notes how her exhale forms tiny hexagonal flakes before dispersing. Geometry of snowflakes, distant cousins of runes carved on heart trees, perhaps scribbles of the same cosmic scribe. He wonders whether warmth can imprint shapes too, petal curves, flame flicker fractals, and whether such shapes might overwrite the frosted script creeping across dreamscapes. Symbols as antibodies. Bran begins designing them within mind. Labyrinths of rose petals spiraling into direwolf silhouettes, suns crowned by oryx stags, stars wreathed in dragon wings, all inscribed in imagined gold ink upon imagined parchment inside the void's mirror hall. When the mirrors shift, these sigils glow, warding shards of ice away for moments. Moments suffice. Moments string into hours, hours into a defense. Outside the cavern, real parchment bears less splendor, yet Jon notices a shift. Ravens arrive bearing not only warnings but also small sketches, childlike drawings of wolves cuddled against dragons beneath a stylized sun. He recognizes Bran's touch, though how the ink sets he cannot tell. The sketches lift gloom in the shield hall, men chuckling at crude wolf snouts. Laughter warms. Few believe the wars ahead will spare them, yet they march with surer footing. Against despair, humor and memory align, forming intangible armor. Ice weaponesses absence, humor weaponesses presence. Though ephemeral, presence flares bright, and the longer flares last, the more nights they illumine. Thus the contest intensifies across planes unseen by swordsman or king. The great other manipulates not merely dreams but emotional climate, sowing loneliness, cynicism, chill of soul that cracks fellowship like flagstones in frost. Bran counters with recollection, suggestion, whispers of shared dawns yet to be, fragmentary but potent. He becomes gardener of hope even while gardener of knowledge, pruning rotted branches of vision, guiding green shoots of story. Yet he dares not prune too aggressive lest he shear necessary warnings. Balance becomes his mantra. Ice and fire, fear and courage, caution and faith. Balance demands unblinking awareness, and awareness invites infiltration. The Ouroboros coils. In that coiling we find ourselves, readers of secret histories, poised upon cusp of knowledge and oblivion. For every question answered, two unfurl, and each unfurling spawns 100 tales. We have traced but slivers, whispers in wind over shattered keeps, mirrors inside caves, frost on stone lips that once smiled in summer sun. We see patterns swirl yet cannot swear which brush paints them. Are the great other's fingers on the palette? Or are we daubing dread onto blank canvas ourselves? Skeptics scoff, prophets rave, children listen rapt, even as the aurorae flicker at midday like torches demanding witness. Somewhere north of memory, beyond the wall and perhaps beyond the shape of time, an entity neither living nor dead waits, weaving labyrinths of cold around seedlings of vision. Somewhere south of doom, a crippled boy weaves counter-labyrinths of warmth inside corridors of bark and bone. Which design will hold when first snows of the final winter fall as black as ash? When ravens croak warnings in tongues no human learned, who will heed? When mirrors cloud with frost until we cannot see ourselves, will we still remember our names? And should we forget, should the last spark of recognition gutter, will that forgetting mark victory for the frozen king or only the near-inevitable ebb of all stories into night? Even now, the wind outside this moment hums, or is it keening? And beneath its note rides a question older than kings, older than sunrise itself. In the war between presence and oblivion, who bears the right to dream, and can a dream remain pure when stared at by eyes carved from winter? Twilight bled slowly into full northern night, a velvet void pricked by the faintest dust of stars. Yet even those stars seemed to flicker under some unseen wind, as if the heavens themselves shivered. Far below, on the silent white steppes north of Craster's Keep, a lone elk staggered across crusted snow, its antlers glazed with rime that refracted the aurora's ghostly sheen. Each exhale plumed silver, lingering unnaturally long before drifting skyward as a braid of mist. From a ridge of black stone ringed by ancient pines, a raven watched. Its eyes gleamed garnet in the half-light, head cocked at a listening angle, as if it heard not the elk's hooves crunching but something deeper, a subterranean resonance beneath the ice. When the elk paused, shuddering, the raven unfolded glossy wings and took flight, lofted on a hush of air so cold it sang like glass. Behind it, the elk's shadow lengthened and froze, literally froze, become a sheet of mirror-black ice that held its shape even after the beast lurched on. In that frozen silhouette, for a heartbeat, a face smoldered, lips parted as though tasting distant grief. Then the ice collapsed into powder under its own fragile, impossible weight. Bran felt the collapse from leagues away. In the palpitant heart of the cave, eyes white and vision unbound, he reeled, clutching armrests of woven root. A wash of pain knifed through marrow, and in its echo whispered a message framed in alien cadence. You see because we allow. A truth or a taunt? He did not know. Mira, waking at his strangled gasp, rushed to steady him, but his pupils still drowned in milky glaze, locked in sight no mortal window could glimpse. He perched on a precipice of absence, a balcony overlooking non-existence lit by thin starlight that offered no warmth, only perspective. From that vantage he beheld the faint lattice of his own life thread, a trembling filament latticing through infinite dark, and close beside it another filament, thicker, colder, pulsating with eerie counter-rhythm. the two strands entwined like vines coiling around a single branch. One end of the colder vine vanished into vastness beyond mortal measure. The other plunged downward, through ice layers and root mazes, toward the living world. Bran realized with dizziness that the vine twined through not merely him but many. He glimpsed Daenerys stirring restless, Jon staring into guttering fire, Sam bent over tomes. The vine flickered through each, subtle as an unspoken doubt. He recoiled, tore free from the sight, fell heavily back into flesh. Breath rasped. The cave felt sweltering, yet his fingertips ached with numbness. Mira touched his cheek and gasped at the chill. Bran met her frightened eyes and forced calm. He whispered that the other's roots grew deeper than they'd feared. Mira demanded guidance, what to do. Bran answered not with strategy but with story, for story alone could transmit fire through cold words. He beckoned her closer and narrated a memory of warmth. Baby Rickon tumbling under weirwood leaves, barking laughter, how even direwolf pups curled at his heels. As Bran spoke, the cave's torches burned brighter. Frost receded from root fibers. He saw then that memory itself, honest, unbroken, was tinder. The great other might plant ice in minds, but minds ablaze with sincere recollection could thaw the seeds. Beyond the cave, winds shifted. At Hardhome's ruin, where charred timbers jutted like splintered ribs, a fisherman's daughter kindled a driftwood fire, telling her orphaned brother stories of old Nan's night of the laughing tree. Each laugh she forced into the tale cracked icy crust underfoot. Unaware of any cosmic war, she nonetheless contributed to one, weaving warmth around two half-frozen souls. The great other felt such moments. Bran sensed how that colder vine convulsed whenever honest joy flickered anywhere, as though joy scalded. He took note. If laughter could sear, armies might be armed with songs. But laughter alone would not bar the storm. The vine persisted, shivering through countless hearts. Bran resolved to trace it backward, to its buried taproot. He slipped again into trance, letting consciousness travel along frosted filament, passing glimpses of lives entangled. A mute knight's watch stable hand startled by dreams of upside-down weirwoods, a Volantine candlemaker whose wax sculptures perspired rhyme, an Ibonese sailor beset by visions of boys with wolf's eyes. Each thread vibrated with remote influence, yet none bespoke origin. So Bran plunged deeper, his will a steel needle threading glacial coils, until at last he pierced a veil of utter stillness. Before him unfolded a palace of silence. Columns of compressed eons, archways etched from moonless void. No color existed here. Form defined itself purely by the absence of form around it. In that palace sat no throne. Thrones imply rule, but a pool mirror-smooth, whose reflection revealed nothing but deeper shade. From the pool rose a figure of almost form, height of a man, outline of suggestion. Its surface was not flesh but starlight caught beneath ice, shimmering glints that coalesced into semblance of limbs. Where eyes should burn, cavities yawned empty, yet Bran felt them. They regarded him not as enemy, but equation. A voice poured, frictionless. "You are Aperture." He braced, summoned every memory of sunlit courtyards, of Arya jabbing sticks, of Mother's smile in first thaw. He flung them forth like firebrands. Sparks collided with silence, casting fleeting hue upon featureless hall. The figure did not flinch, yet Bran sensed recoil elsewhere in the vine network. Human hearts twitched, dreamers stirred. The voice returned. "Aperture may close or widen." Which? Bran answered with a memory of Ned's counsel. "The man who passes the sentence must swing the sword." He told the figure he would decide the opening's width, not companion nor adversary. The figure inclined, acknowledgement or dismissal, and pool, palace, presence folded upon themselves. Bran plummeted back to cave, coughing frost crystals. That encounter burned scant seconds in real time. To Bran it spanned centuries of thought. He shared little with Mira, words too brittle to bear. Yet he now knew the great other's strategy. Not brute domination but infiltration. Not erasure of light but repurposing of apertures. Each green sight, each prophetic dreamer, each attuned soul served as window pane. Frost sought to etch those panes opaque with despair so that visions of hope refracted into illusions of futility. Bran could not slam windows closed. The realm required foreknowledge. He must instead glaze them with tempered glass, memories bright enough to resist etching, yet porous enough to admit truths. Toward that task he penned ravens anew. Feathers carried to Jon not warnings but stories of their father teaching Bran to ride. To Daenerys he sent sketches, childish yet evocative, of dragon wings sheltering lambs from ice rain. To Sam, lines from old songs of the North, verses praising hearths that never sleep. These missives perplexed recipients. Where dire threats were expected, gentle recollection arrived. Yet each found themselves humming forgotten tunes, or laughing softly, or pausing before hate. Small interludes, but each dampened the vine's chill. Still war brewed. On the fist of the first men, rangers discovering obsidian caches now reported shards fused to ice that would not melt even at campfire's heart, instead hissing and releasing black vapor that extinguished flames. Maester Cressen's annotations in ancient bestiaries spoke of shadow glass, rumored to drink vitality. Jon dispatched a party to gather the shards. Of 14 men, only 9 returned, eyes rimmed in crimson capillaries, complaining of dreams inside mirrors. Jon burned half the shards in a pyre along with their ice casing. The rest he sealed in lead and buried under watch. Yet burial offered no guarantee. Lead slows poison but does not cure. At Dragonstone, Drakas the smith forged arrowheads of dragonglass wrapped in fine gold leaf, theorizing the gold would conduct heat of flame arrows straight into undead marrow. When first test fired at a condemned mastiff white, the shard splintered on contact, but each splinter lodged, steaming, seared surrounding flesh, promising. Yet as the dog crumbled, a sheet of white hoarfrost blossomed outward from corpse, blanketing sand for yards. The frost formed sigils reminiscent of the other's spiral pattern. Observers fled. Drakas recorded results, noting that the hoarfrost persisted even after midday sun. Maesters argued to destroy the range. Melisandre argued to purify it with fire ritual. Daenerys, reading Bran's sketches, ordered both. Wildfire to cleanse, prayers to hallow, and children of the island to carve new runes of warmth along shoreline. When the wildfire conflagration ended, frost sigils remained, though faint. Symbols may outlive substance. Meanwhile, the Ares' trembling lord dreamed again. Not of scratching crows, but of corridors of lightless ice, lined with statues wearing faces he knew. One statue bore his mother's visage, mouth sewn shut with wire of icicles. Another bore Peter Baelish's leer, Isocket's void. The boy awoke screaming. Mirrors in his chamber shattered inward, shards fanning like flower petals of frost. Maester Coleman summoned ravens seeking counsel. Bran answered with sighing memory of snowball fights between Stark siblings, instructing Coleman to recite such tales nightly. Coleman obeyed. After a fortnight, Robert's dreams softened, corridors thawed, statues cracked. Yet each night Coleman himself felt colder, though he never dreamed at all. Proof that narrative warmth draws chill unto storyteller. Sacrifice becomes currency. In the Citadel, Sam's research progressed. He discovered in a Reuner treatise a reference to winter's echo, resonant frequencies of heartbreak that travel through water faster than sound. Experiments with tuning forks in heated baths confirmed. Certain pitches caused minute frost to creep across surface despite high temperature. Sam surmised the great other communicated not only through dreams but through molecular sympathy, melodies of despair. He began drafting counterfrequencies, chords of hope. He practiced hums in candlelit alcoves. Frost on quills receded measurably. Though small, a new weapon was born, a choir of warmth. Choirs formed spontaneously elsewhere. Smiths at Deepwood hammered axes in rhythmic cadence, singing drinking songs. Children in White Harbor skipped rope to rhymes praising the new moon. Sailors on summer islands painted hulls with spirals of vibrant tortoise blue, a pigment that radiated heat faintly under starlight. The great Other's vine network quaked at each note of communal joy. Bran felt the tremors, saw aperture windows shimmer with nascent stained glass. Infuriated, the frost struck back. One dawn, residents of Maidenpool found their harbor frozen solid to ocean floor. Ships locked mid-wave, gulls petrified in ice mid-cry. At the center of freeze, a spiral ridge rose, carved with images of intertwined wolves and dragons, mocking. The freeze retreated by noon, leaving water fetid. Every fish within rotted instantly. Frenzied lords blamed Targaryen sorcery. Riots flared. Word of Bran's warm sketches turned scapegoating eyes north. Aperture threatens to widen. Indeed, Bran realized gentle fires alone could not check the onslaught. Structural defenses were needed. He sought counsel of living root memory, immersing consciousness into depths beneath the cave, deeper than Bloodraven ever dared. There, he encountered after-images of First Men treaties, sigils of joining, circles overlapping circles, each intersection inscribed with runic vow. He interpreted synergy of 4 powers: ice, fire, earth, blood, balanced by will. Once, this synergy anchored seasons. The great other now fed on imbalance. Restore synergy, starve the vine. But one component lay absent: blood of living pact-bearers. Sacrifice awaited. Who would bleed? Bran shuddered. Already hearts broke under winter's rumor. Yet sacrifice need not be fatal, some pain suffices. He penned one more raven to Jon, asking him to stand upon the wall's highest tower at high moon and speak aloud his fears, naming them truly. Words as blood. Jon obeyed. Night wind whipped his cloak, but he confessed to the dark. Fear of failing brothers, fear of loving Daenerys, fear of being unloved bastard forever. As the last fear left his lips, the Tower of Night quaked. A faint cracking, then a groan. For a moment the cold vine recoiled. Bran felt release, a pocket of warmth blossoming far north. Sacrifice of pride, of silent shame, fed the counterspell. Rituals spread. Sansa knelt before Winterfell Hearttree and whispered regrets of not defending Arya sooner. Sam admitted to Gilly his dread of dying a coward. Daenerys confessed in fiery prayer her terror of ruling unjustly. Each confession mirrored others, forming new lattice of candor. Weirwoods drank tears, roots pulsed. The vine shrank, not severed, but thinned. Yet desperate bullies strike hardest when cornered. The great other initiated storm across entire breadth of the Frostfangs. Winds so fierce they ground Night's Watch patrols, burying them alive beneath avalanches of glassy snow. When rescue arrived days later, bodies stood upright in icy tombs, eyes unblinking, mouths parted in silent song they never learned. On their tongues lay tiny crystals shaped like keys. Maester Aemon once said every life is a key to some door. The cold had forged these keys from stolen breath. What doors would they open? Jon sealed the bodies in blockhouses lined with dragon steel, praying it would suffice. In Old Town, a novice testing Sam's hope-humming inadvertently unlocked column of warm mist that climbed the rookery spire, thawing ravens' wings. Within, the mist flickered lights like minuscule aurora.
Masters panicked, bells rang.
Yet the mist settled gently, leaving every raven's feathers iridescent, stronger. Sam hypothesized the hope frequency bonded calcium lattice in quills, empowering messengers. Ravens as living conduits of warmth. Bran's windows given wings. Across seas, the Red Temple unleashed its own counterassault. A grand rite of relighting, braziers placed every 50 paces along Volantis's black wall, each pyre fed with aromatic cedar and drops of priestly blood. Flames roared column high. Onlookers felt hearts race. Some cried without knowing why. Flames turned white-hot, then surprisingly azure, yet not frost blue of the other, but bright midday sky blue warm to skin. Duality refined. Kinvara declared the birth of true fire, capable of scorching cold at its root. Whether hubris or breakthrough, the rite's impact rippled. Temperatures in nearby streets rose enough to blossom bougainvillea out of season. Distant watchers in Karth reported their carved ice spheres sweating amid desert night. Within Dream, Bran navigated these ripples, patching fractures where vine yet clung, coaxing synergy where elements aligned. He coaxed Theon Greyjoy's lingering guilt into confession before silent gods would, healing old wound. He nudged Asha to recall laughter with brothers lost, forging warmth among Ironborn. Yet each success leached him. Mira noted circles under his eyes blackening, as if he lent color to world. She prayed he would not fade like Bloodraven into root. Then came the black eclipse. Without warning, Moon vanished behind disk of lightless shadow at full noon across the bight. Scholars frantic measured angles. No celestial object predicted. For quarter hour, darkness reigned. Temperatures plunged. Sea steamed. In gloom, sky lit with pulses of green lightning forming lattice reminiscent of weirwood branches inverted. Ships' masts coated in instant hoarfrost that burst like shrapnel when day returned. Bran, though awake, felt the shadow pass through his mind, an eclipse of thought. For those minutes he could not remember his name. After memories returned, but dislocated, events out of order, faces mismatched. It took Mira's steady voice to anchor him. She repeated their story from first meeting, threading a lifeline of facts. The eclipse proved great others might remain formidable. Ability to draw cosmic cloth across sun itself, to reorder memory. Hope Choir had stung, but not slain. Bran convened council within dream among few he trusted. Jon, Daenerys, Sam, Davos, Sansa. Brought together in shared vision of a quiet glade under false dawn. They spoke as equals, though some had never met. Bran explained synergy ritual, eclipse threat, necessity of union beyond banners. Each swore in dream to forge alliance of warmth. Dragons aloft over walls of dragonglass. Ravens layered in hope songs, armies wielding blades quenched in truthful confession. Oaths in dream may falter, but this dream bound by weirwood blood, dragon fire, river lore. On waking, each remembered vow lucidly. Actions followed. Daenerys dispatched regal north laden with wildfire vials and seeds of Targaryen roses bred for winter bloom. Jon marshaled free folk to build mirrored barricades that reflect dawn deeper into valley shadows. Sansa ordered Winterfell forges to etch runes of candor onto sword hilts, words of personal truths bound to steel. Sam composed hymns, low and lilting, easy for peasants to hum. Throughout realm, pulse quickened. The great other answered with subtle sabotage. Children vanishing in morning fog, priests found frozen to altars mid-prayer, ravens off course. Yet for every loss, a spark of solidarity flared brighter elsewhere. Candlelight glimmering in windows across white knife villages, small folk leaving bread and salt on thresholds for strangers fleeing storm. The vine network snarled. Bran sensed fractures splinter along its length. The colder filament grew brittle where warmth loops interwove. At last, one night Bran dreamed of the Palace of Silence again. Pool remained, but its surface fissured, revealing gleam of deep fire. No flame, but molten memory, roiling. The figure rose, silhouette now cracked. Its voice softer, almost wounded. Pattern unravels. Bran answered, "Seasons balance." The figure whispered, "Aperture closes." Bran countered, "Widens, but on our terms." The palace trembled. Cracks spidered across columns. Fragments fell upward, dissolving into stars. The figure's hollow eyes flickered with first motes of color. It reached palm of translucent ice, offering not threat but possibility. Bran hesitated. Could union overshadow domination? He extended hand of warmth. Fingertips met chill. Where they touched, mist formed. Not icy but temperate, a cloud of dawn. They parted. Bran awoke to quiet cave dawn. Torches low but steady, no frost on hair. Mira slept peacefully. Outside, snow still drifted, but flakes melted upon root entrance instead of lingering. Small victory, fragile as blossom bud in early spring, yet real. He understood. The war would rage years, maybe lifetimes, but Aperture now housed gatekeeper who knew both songs. Ice's hush, fire's roar, and could weave them into seasonal hymn. Whether the realm would survive to sing that hymn depended on countless choices yet to come. A sailor choosing laughter over liquor, a lord confessing doubt, a child daring to hope. No prophecy fixed those choices. No puppeteer, frost or fire, could script them all. The Great Other manipulated, yes, but manipulation wanes where will is vigilant. Bran closed his eyes, summoned memory of summer grass tickling bare feet, and breathed it outward into dream space. Somewhere south, a child chasing fireflies paused, suddenly warmed, though night remained cool. Bran smiled, yet open questions lingered like soft footprints in fresh snow. What new form might the Great Other assume, now that brute chill faltered? Would true fire flare too fierce, scorching fields it meant to guard? Could confession rituals persist once victories ease fear? And when next eclipse shadowed sun, would humanity sing hope loud enough to breach silence? The vine still coiled through hearts, albeit thinner. Watchers must remain. Bran, perched between roots and stars, pledged vigil, knowing that even vigilance must anchor in joy, else freeze from within. He reached for another recollection. Arya's grin, Jon's ruffle of his hair, and let it glow. Above the cave, dawn spread pale gold over snowbound land. In its hush, winds carried not keening but quiet hum, a chord of fire and frost intertwined, neither dominating, both discernible. The song drifted over walls' gleaming battlements, rippled across shivering sea, teased sails in distant harbors, slipped through palace shutters and peasant huts alike. Those who heard paused, hearts tipping toward wonder, not knowing source, only sensing possibility. Under that song, steps of doom and deliverance alike would unfold, traced upon page of history yet unwritten. Quills weighted, ink receptive. The aperture, tempered, remained open, and eyes ancient and young gazed through, measuring not merely light nor dark, but the dance of their convergence, writing future in mirrored snowflakes that melt before name can be spoken. Yet seed rivers that flow long after song fades into quiet dawn once more. Mist settled over the wolfswood in long pale ribbons, each strand glimmering with moonfrost as though the forest exhaled silver breath. No animals stirred. Even owls had fallen mute, their usual night cries replaced by a hush so profound it pressed against bark and bone alike. Gnarled trunks, slick with rime, tilted like wary sentinels toward a modest clearing where the snow lay troubled by a curious pattern. Spirals of boot prints that began nowhere and ended nowhere, each indentation rimmed with frozen dew that refused to melt no matter how fiercely the midnight air warmed. A lone dire wolf would have scented nothing there, for the trail's author never truly walked the world. It brushed it, softly, as a thought brushes memory before fading. Down in Winterfell's stone belly, Bran woke from that vision with the echo of cold laughter still ringing in his ears. His bedchamber smelled of smoke, pine resin, and the faint musk of summer dozing nearby, but underneath that reassuring scent crept a subtler note. Iron gone brittle, like a sword held too long to the forge, ready to shatter at the first strike. The child forced breath through clenched teeth, fighting the tremor that always seized him when the Great Other pawed at his walls. Only when summer's distant heartbeat resonated through the skin of his spirit did the shaking ease. The candle flared. A shape moved in shadows. Mira, etching runes of warmth on a block of weirwood she kept as ward. Each carved groove filled instantly with sticky sap that glowed faintly amber. The glow reminded Bran of dawn in another life, the sun climbing over the broken tower while old Nen narrated giants so tall they tickled clouds. That memory glowed too, and when he offered it to the darkness gathering behind his eyes, the darkness recoiled. Not far, but enough. For now, south in Riverrun, Edmure Tully stood upon the battlements, casting feed to the grackles that gathered on parapets. He talked to them softly, recalling the bannermen and cousins long dead, until their chattering merged into a trembling minor chord. Then, without warning, every bird's head snapped northward as if jerked by wire. Wings flapped, the air filled with black feathers rising. For a breathless instant, they formed a precise spiral above Edmure's head. Then they burst apart. Snow, though it was early autumn, sifted down in singular flakes that did not melt upon his mail. In each flake, Edmure glimpsed the suggestion of a lined human face, some old, some young, all silent. He felt a sting of tears without knowing why, and in that salt warmth the flakes finally dissolved, leaving only wet lashes. Maester Vyman, summoned to witness, insisted it was nothing but migratory shock. Edmure, trusting but unsettled, nonetheless ordered more candles placed along the ramparts. Wax, though meager, still defies dark. The Vale's narrow paths echoed with clanging hooves as Jon Royce descended from the bloody gate, runes upon his gray steel glimmering in moonshine. Midway down, near the glittering caves, his party paused where frost lilies, spring flowers, stood blooming atop crusted snow. Lady Waynwood dismounted, touched a petal, drew back with a hiss. The flower's touch burned cold. Ser Jon frowned at the unnatural event but had no lore to hand. Mira, miles away but attuned through Bran's stray vision echoes, felt the flower's lonely chill press like a finger at the base of her skull. She asked Bran what it meant. Bran answered that frost lilies open only at windows between seasons, that wherever they bloom the other's fingers test hinges. Hinges may open both directions. On Dragonstone, Daenerys dreamt again of the heart tree in the wasteland. In this vision, the tree's white limbs split horizon-like across black sands, its face a mask of wild grief and ecstasy as wildfires raged behind it. The flames licked the bark but left it unblackened, turning instead to curling frost by the time they reached its eyes. She roused, skin sheened with sweat, to find Drogon perched upon the stone drum, wings mantled against a wind carrying no scent but despair. He roared once, an oddly subdued, wavering sound, then leapt skyward. Ash stirred like snow across the courtyard. Daenerys cloaked herself and went to the rookery, where a raven from Bran waited. No words, only a scrap of charcoal sketch. Dragon wings sheltering lambs, the lambs were patterned like weirwood leaves. She did not understand, yet it softened the stone lodged beneath her breast. She tucked the sketch near her heart, but the great other was patient. In the night's deepest watch, inside Maester's citadels, quills scratched out half-truths born of fatigue and growing doubt. Archmaester Ibro's red plague signs into the aurora lights, preaching quarantine wherever the sky blazed green. Villages barred roads, shutting hearths to travelers pleading for shelter. Where doors closed, cold slipped through cracks, feeding on isolation. The vine thickened anew, rooting itself in lonely hearts. Bran saw it. He tasted each closing door as a drop of blood on his tongue. So he guided ravens with drafts of memory, letters delivered in blank parchment except for lists of names, relatives, friends, beloveds lost or living, written in the hand of the intended recipient, though no ink touched by another could so perfectly mimic stroke and pressure. Each addressee, shaken, sought the company of someone on the list. In embrace they found warmth. Bran's ruse cost him a breath of strength each time. Shadows under his eyes deepened, but the nights grew fractionally less sharp in those corners of the realm. At Hardhome, where ice pillars rose like broken teeth from ashen earth, Tormund found skeletons untouched by rot stacked in a ring, each cradling a stone heart burnt black. He smashed the stones with his club. Inside every core lay a gemstone of clear quartz pulsing with eerie blue flame. The wildling war chief, no stranger to curses, flung the gems into the sea of sighs and spat thrice. Waves hissed and froze around each sinking spark. From afar, Bran felt the vine jerk, an umbilical severed, a small but potent amulet of dread lost. Downriver, Thuras resumed his experiments with song. By repeated trial, he discovered certain words of the old tongue, when sung to the tune of lullabies, wove warmth into stone walls. He dispatched wandering singers to teach taverns the melody. One night, the air above the crossroads shimmered with faint red-gold shimmer after 100 tipsy voices bellowed the refrain. Travelers remarked the inn's hearthwood lasted twice as long afterward. A single tavern, a single night, yet echoes multiply, and fire songs threaded the vine network like glowing veins. The great other retaliated. Siege lines of chill advanced, not openly but in souls. Sudden estrangements, whispers of betrayal. In White Harbor, rumors spread that Manderleys colluded with whites, poisoning their own bread. Bakers were hanged. Wheat stores burnt. Frost followed famine. Bran's ravens could not deliver memory quickly enough. Cracks yawned. Mira pleaded that they must enlist more than ravens and songs, that they must teach the people to kindle memory themselves. Bran agreed. Thus he wove a dream wind, subtle, drifting across Westeros one unheralded dawn. Those who breathed it tasted snowmelt sweet as mother's milk, and into their minds slipped a desire to speak aloud a story of earliest joy at next hearth gathering. Most obeyed without understanding why. At nightly fires, farmers recounted first hunts, graybeards described first kisses. Story circles formed spontaneously across fields and squares. Every spoken joy flared, tiny lanterns multiplied. The vine recoiled at each flare, yet struck harder where circles faltered, turning unsung hamlets to icicles. It became a race, voice versus hush. In King's Landing, Cersei smelled weakness in such soft tactics. She commissioned new scorpions tipped with dragonglass, convinced that killing dragons, symbols of hope for many, would snuff the embers Bran stoked. Qyburn oversaw forging, yet each bolt, upon cooling, grew a brittle frost line down its shaft. Tests snapped them mid-air. Furious, Cersei ordered more iron, more bellows. Each attempt failed. Qyburn speculated sabotage, but the forges were untouched. He kept a broken bolt in his chamber, studying the frost. One night he heated it red-hot. Frost remained. Not water ice then, but soul ice resistant to heat that is merely flesh. He considered sending a sample to the Citadel, then burned it instead, unwilling to share the secret of his failure. Across the seas, Kinvara's True Fire initiative spread to Myr, Lys, Tyrosh, each city erecting beacon spires. In Myr, the beacon flared sky, blue for 3 nights, then flickered to white. Residents reported vivid dreams of loved ones long dead, begging them to extinguish the flame. Some priests relented. Beacon darkened. Frost rolled from tower base like mist. Where white flame persisted, Volantis. Commerce boomed. Crops sprouted. The pattern was clear. True flame demanded steadfastness. Hesitation invited inversion. Bran chronicled results in mind, charting interplay. Conviction as warmth, doubt as doorway. In the night fort, the chained white's pleas grew faint, replaced by brittle laughter. The iron bonds ice solid. Rangers feared the white might escape through frost creeping outward, forging its own keys. They debated torching the entire cell. Instead, Jon ordered singers to perform Sam's Hope Hymn outside the sealed door nightly. After 7 nights, frost retreated. The white's bones cracked under internal thaw, collapsed lifeless again. But outside, on the wall's outer face, a new spiral burnished by frost had appeared. The Great Other acknowledged the victory and mocked with artistry. Bran's strength waned, but determination hardened. He decided upon a pilgrimage in spirit to the center of that spiral on the wall. Selecting a calm dusk, he slid free of flesh, pouring consciousness through weirroot tunnels, branching upward until he perched inside the spiral's nexus. There, he found a window of perfect ice, set into the wall's thickness. Through it, he saw the land beyond, snowfields empty but for one figure cloaked in pale rags. The figure lifted a sapphire torch and traced runes of anti-fire across the ice. Each stroke bled black light, darkening the pane. Bran knew if the sigil completed, warmth threads in the vine network would unravel. He lunged into the figure's awareness like arrow through fog. A collision of wills erupted, his memories of laughter clanging against vistas of endless solitude. The figure staggered. Torch slipped. Bran seized a fleeting chance, unleashing flood of story. Arya's first dance lesson, Hodder's booming grin, Robb's oath under red leaf canopy. The ice cracked, black light flickered, yet the figure rallied, revealing no face under hood, only swirling void echoing starless sky. The thrust torch again. Then another presence joined, soft, thrumming. Sam's melody, distant yet clear, threading through the crack. The lullaby's cadence caressed the void, shaping it briefly into a childlike visage. Empty sockets, but rounded cheeks, almost gentle. The torch fell, extinguished. The hooded figure dissolved into flurry of snowflakes that blew backward across the ranges, scattering. Bran, gasping, withdrew. Back in Winterfell, torches inside the gods would flared simultaneously, green flame dancing like summer leaves. Sansa, on evening walk, witnessed and felt heat without pain. She spoke a simple prayer, to fathers gone, to brothers distant, and tender warmth engulfed the tree's grin, stretching the mouth upward as if the old face smiled. Elsewhere, trees grimaced, but one smile was enough to tilt balances. The great other's vine now frayed, gaps of light ignited along its length. Yet new tendrils sprouted, hungry. Bran identified the source. Despair clustering around those who had tasted warmth then lost it. Widows, orphans left after years of wars. Their grief provided fertile soil. Bran asked Mira to ride south, gather minstrels willing to sing the old tales of the Dawn Age. She rode at dawn, spear as walking staff, carrying scrolls of lyrics Sam and Thuras stitched. Every village she visited lit a new circle of song, circles linked like chainmail. Euron Greyjoy, drawing near to Old Town with stolen Valyrian horns, sought to break those links. He ordered Silence's sorcerers to blow Dragonbinder not for dragons but to call storms of ice. The note erupted, a groan deep as chasm. Sky answered. Clouds coalesced, spitting hail daggers the size of spears. Old Town's harbor iced within minutes. Beacon of the high tower dimmed, its obsidian steps frosting. But inside the Maester's citadel, Sam's choir of novices had gathered precisely that hour to rehearse. Their harmony, trembling, turned hail to rain before it struck the copper rooftops. Euron cursed, hearing melody slip through his horn's dying echo. Dragonbinder cracked. Frost crept along inlaid glyphs toward the mouthpiece and shattered it in his hands. Evening settled after that tempest, bringing darkness star-jeweled and fragile. Bran gathered what remained of his strength for one final act that season, forging communion between children of the forest on Isle of Faces and Red Temple in Volantis. He entered Dream Corridor lined with cedar flame, guided by Kinvara's prayers, and beckoned Leaf's song across thousands of leagues of root memory. Leaf appeared, eyes luminescent gold, and listened as Kinvara recited verses honoring both sunlight and shadow. They reached a chord to weave firevine patterns atop root labyrinths, merging magics long estranged. The union flared violet in dream space, casting light upon cracks where silence seeped. Mosaic of dialogue, once bright with conflict, now thrummed with compromise. Westeros slept that night beneath a sky absent aurora for the first time in moons. Dew formed on grass instead of frost. Children dreamed of fireplaces rather than empty ice fields. Farmers dreamed of harvest without rot. Bran drifted across that dreamland, tenderly mending fissures, a tailor stitching blankets. For every patch he laid, a quiver coursed through the vine, but where patches met, chill faltered. He woke to dawn wood smoke and the smell of bread, real bread, baked by kitchen hands who hours earlier sang Sam's hymn while kneading. Winter remained hunched beyond the wall, but its advance slowed. The great other paused, perhaps contemplating negotiation. Yet the war's nature forbade treaties carved in ink. Its clauses were woven in hearts and sung in breath. Each day's choice rewrote them. Stark words remained sober. Winter is coming. But across hearths now echoed a new refrain, soft but gaining. After winter, spring. Bran closed his eyes, knowing he would soon plunge again into labyrinths of frost and flame, that 5 hours, 5 days, or 5 years of vigilance still might not suffice. But he also knew a secret as old as first dawn. A single memory, honestly kept, can kindle 10,000 more. And memories, unlike swords, grow sharper with sharing. So he inhaled the scent of warm bread, let it bake into soul, and exhaled it into ravens winging skyward, each feather inscribed with untold tales awaiting eager listeners under long nights' fading stars. The tale would continue, as tales must, meandering through peril and wonder. But somewhere deep beneath snow and shadow the aperture remained, tempered, steadfast, forever ajar to light.